सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Hello and welcome back to World 360. This festive season hasn't only brought merriment and cheer, but also a new Prime Minister in Nepal and even the possibility of cheaper British cricket bats and pads entering India. We're also seeing a common link between protests in Iran and France. So for our three geopolitical topics of the day, we're looking at quite the range of issues. One, what cricket has to do with trade. Two, why an election in a neighboring country of India's is important, and more. So first up, cricket and trade. As you may have heard, India and the UK have been trying to work out a free trade deal, which is an agreement that seeks to boost trade between the two countries and seeks to cut down tariffs on certain goods exchanged between the two countries. Now, India and UK were planning to wrap up the deal by Diwali this year, but the death of Queen Elizabeth II and then major domestic changes in the UK, which saw Liz Truss step down as Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak picking up the mantle, delayed the FTA even further. But that aside, a free trade deal between India and the UK, especially given the colonial history, would be a monumental achievement if the Modi government is able to pull it off. A simple Google search about the FTA talks will probably bombard you with one phrase: Scotch whisky. Scotch whisky has been the talk of the town ever since India and the UK resumed discussions for a free trade agreement. And as you know, India is one of the biggest consumers of Scotch whisky. But now it seems another product enjoyed by both Brits and Indians could feature in the free trade deal as well. That is cricket, or more specifically, cricket goods. Currently, British cricket bats and pads face a tariff of 20% and English willow faces a tariff of 10% upon entering India. Now, English willow is a specific type of wood used in cricket bats which is white in color. Willow is also grown in Kashmir and has a brownish color. In fact, Virat Kohli uses a bat made of grade A English willow. Keep in mind that India manufactures 95% of bats used by international cricketers, and its cricket equipment industry is worth approximately rupees 350 crores. The beauty of using willow is that it ensures the final product of a cricket bat can handle high-speed impact without splintering or breaking. So as you can imagine, the weight of the cricket bat can have a huge impact on the performance of a player. Now, India imports a majority of its willow from the UK. In fact, it imported a total of 11.7 million USD of willow in the financial year of 2020, more than half of which came from the UK. Now, a trade deal with the UK could reduce the tariffs of willow among other cricket goods entering India, which is why UK cricket exporters are closely watching the ongoing FTA negotiations. British brands like Gun & More could stand to benefit majorly from tariff cuts. Reports say that the Indian government plans to wrap up the trade deal with the UK by March 2023. So far, 6 rounds of talks have been held and a draft treaty has also been drawn up. Let's see if that deadline is reached or if it will lapse like it did in Diwali. For our next topic, we're looking towards Nepal, where in a fascinating turn of events, a new Prime Minister has emerged. If you recall, Nepal went to general elections on 20th November. Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba emerged as the winner after his ruling coalition formed by his party, the Nepali Congress, secured a majority of votes. Many expected Deuba to be taking oath as Prime Minister in the weeks to come. But the decision of one man brought Deuba's ruling coalition crumbling down. That man is Pushpa Kamal Dahal, also nicknamed Prachanda, a former Maoist leader who led a 10-year rebellion against Nepal's monarchy from 1996 to 2006. He had also served as Prime Minister twice before. Dahal, who heads the CPN Maoist Centre Party, decided to exit Deuba's coalition after the election. He was then able to gain the support of 7 other parties, including his rival-turned-ally KP Sharma Oli, who is also a former Prime Minister of Nepal. Now, what does Dahal's win mean for India? For one, he has been described as a pro-China leader. In the past, he had said Nepal needs a fresh understanding with India to be developed on the basis of a quote-unquote changed scenario. It was also under Dahal's previous stint as Prime Minister in 2017 that a major infrastructure project was handed over by the Nepal government to the Nepal army, which is pretty rare to see. You may have heard about this project recently after Nepal's Supreme Court temporarily banned the Nepal army from awarding a contract to a Chinese company to carry out this project. Also, Dahal's main backer KP Sharma Oli has also been termed pro-China. In fact, in 2015, when Oli first became PM, the Chinese state media stated that the ties between the two countries would improve as a quote-unquote Beijing-friendly coalition was in power. There was also the time when Oli's government had in May 2020 released maps that showed Indian territories as part of Nepal. Now, in recent years, both India and China have vied for influence in Nepal, especially when it came to infrastructure projects and energy projects. It remains to be seen how this plays out with Dahal as the new Prime Minister. For our last topic, we're looking at a very specific ethnic group, the Kurdish community. Why? Well, because Paris is currently witnessing violent unrest and protest by the city's Kurdish community. This came days after a gunman targeted a Kurdish culture center in Paris and shot members of the local community. 3 people died in the incident. The attacker had a record of racist violence, and it has been suspected that this incident was also racially motivated. Now, reports say the man was immediately arrested after he opened fire, but that he was later freed. And this has supposedly elicited more anger from the Kurdish community in Paris. Now, there's also a Kurdish connection with protests in Iran. Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old woman who died allegedly due to police brutality sparking nationwide protests in Iran, was a Kurd from a city called Saqqez. In fact, the popular slogan that has emerged from the Iranian protests, Jin Jian Azadi, means woman, life and freedom in the Kurdish language. The Kurds have a tumultuous history, and in modern times, they have faced counter-insurgency taboos. So let's start from the beginning. The Kurds are an Iranian ethnic group in Western Asia who were originally nomads. They are a distinct race, culture, and even have their own Iranian language known as Kurdish. They can be found in parts of Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Now, this community used to be part of the Ottoman Empire as part of Kurdistan. After the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the Allied powers of World War I split it up, including Kurdish-occupied areas. Since then, the Kurds have always been a displaced community struggling with statelessness and marginalization. This has continued into the 21st century as well, especially considering a majority of Kurds reside in war-torn countries like Syria and Iraq. Now, their struggle was put on display when in 1991, Iraq President Saddam Hussein launched a violent campaign against Kurds in northern Iraq. Pictures of them fleeing were plastered on newspapers globally. Virtually the entire Kurdish population of northern Iraq fled Saddam Hussein's forces. In Iraq, it seemed the US and other Western countries supported Kurds and condemned Saddam Hussein's policy. In Turkey, however, there's a different story. In Turkey, Kurds make up about 15% of the population and are mostly pastoral inhabitants. When the Turkish economy was growing in the 1960s and 70s, the Kurds began to resist being civilized and thus grew the Kurdish nationalist movement. After the 1980 coup in Turkey, the government viewed the Kurdish nationalists as insurgents and tried to wipe them out. Successive Turkish governments have also been wary about Kurdish national sentiments. Now, armed Kurdish groups in Turkey like the PKK have been banned and have been listed as a terrorist group also by Turkey, the US, and some members of the EU. This is why the history of the Kurds and their place in the world may appear confusing. In Iraq, they were targeted by Saddam Hussein, who didn't consider them Iraqi citizens, but rather Iranians. And then in Turkey, they face insurgency taboos. Kurds aren't exactly Arabs, nor are they exactly Turkish. Their unique identity has often been met with discrimination. And now we're seeing this play out with migrant Kurds in Western countries like France. Before we conclude, I'd like to share an amazing report by Kurdish artist Jian Zandi. She talks about the erasure of Kurdish identities and highlights Mahsa Amini as an example. The young woman who died in Iran, her name is technically not Mahsa Amini, but Gina, a Kurdish name. But since the Iranian regime doesn't recognize names that aren't of Islamic or Persian origin, her Iranian state-approved name is Mahsa Amini. So thank you so much for watching. These are the 3 geopolitical issues I hope you enjoyed. My name is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint. Do keep following us on social media.